All right, what's going on? Third team's 30 minutes. Miami Heat solo again. So 15 minutes. Let's go ahead and put 15 minutes on the clock. Bam. All right, let's go ahead and do it. So the Miami Heat, defending Eastern Conference champions, NBA finalists, had a strong showing versus the Lakers in the finals last year. All things considering, the biggest question for them is: was it a fluke? Was it the bubble? Or is this something that can portend to them going out in the season? So, a lot of people have said that due to their militaristic culture, that was just right up the Heat's alley for having adjusting well into the bubble. We've talked about players like Pascal Siakam, Paul George, saying that they struggled in the bubble with the environment. Even LeBron, he usually goes zero dark 30 during the playoffs, and he didn't. And when asked why he didn't and why he was tweeting and texting out and being active on social media when he usually goes dark, he said it's just different this year in the bubble. So a lot of people said that the Heat being so disciplined in their approach, militaristic in their approach, having a player like Jimmy Butler who follows those same type of standards on and off the court, they were just tailor made to be successful in the bubble. I think that might have something to do with it. I think that they also were a great matchup for the team that they beat in the bubble as well. I think that you have Eric Spoelstra, one of the top three coaches in the league, and obviously Tyler Herro seemed like he took a lead. And I just thought it was just a bunch of factors that came together for them to catch lightning in the bubble. But I do think it portends to them, playing well in the season and being successful this year. You see, you can't replicate that type of experience. You can't replicate the type of confidence that they got from playing in those type of games. Players like Duncan Robinson, players like Tyler Herro playing in those type of games. Usually, sometimes when teams go to the finals, you deal with this malaise and almost like a air of we've made it and a gravitas and a championship hangover or finals hangover where they think, oh well, they kind of sleepwalk through the season because it's not important. But I think that they get all of the benefits from going to the finals, which I mentioned, but they do get another benefit that a lot of people are questioning in it. So they still have that chip on their shoulder, like they have something to prove. They don't come in feeling like, we're this great team and we don't have to prove anything to anybody. So I think that that is something that you can definitely look forward to. One of the biggest, questions for their season is Tyler Hero. Does he take that step up? Dan Labertard was very plugged into the Miami Heat. Said that Miami Heat officials have told him they think Tyler Hero is better than Devin Booker. So if that is anywhere close to being true, then they got one in him. And he was being discussed in a package for James Harden. That's another elephant that's in the room. I think that a sticking point has been whether Duncan Robinson gets included in the trade and one of the better shooters in the league. Percentages say he's probably the best shooter of all time. He doesn't shoot at the same volume in the different ways that Steph Curry shoots it, but just percentages and his efficiency said he had one of the best shooting seasons of all time last season. So, I think the Rockets would be wise to add him. I think the Miami is wise to resist. Um, I've talked about Giannis making his decision and making it clear for other teams. This is one of the teams that it's definitely made it clear for. So part of I think the equation for Miami has to be okay. So we don't have that white whale out there in Giannis. We have to look at our team and see where we're going. Does Harden make sense for us? I think timeline wise, if you think that now is the time and you want to go for it, then yeah, he makes sense because his age backs up with Jimmy. You still have Bam as a young player, so you're not completely going for now. But if you think that there's this upside to Hero that we haven't seen, maybe it makes sense to wait. That would be one of the more interesting dynamics in the NBA that he'd have this militaristic approach, and then you have James Harden, who leaves the strip club at 4 a.m. and gets you 40 the next night. That was in Tim McMahon's story. So Miami is definitely a place that you can go out and enjoy yourself. But they do have this approach where they check body weights and check heart rates, and you know, could they, bring him into the fold? Because I think if you bring him in, and depending on how much you have to trade away to get him, they're definitely a contender. You could say probably the favorite in the East with that trio of Harden, Jimmy Butler, and Bam. And fits like a glove too. I think there's not that much shooting around Harden, but Bam is a special dive man, and Jimmy Butler's been shown to be a player that can score 40, but is fine scoring 11. So you put those two together, it'd be an interesting pairing. But back to Miami this year. The leap that Tyler Herro takes or doesn't take is going to decide a lot for them, because I don't think you can really replicate the way that Crowder played for them in the bubble. Shot the ball extremely well defensively. They brought in Avery Bradley, but I think that his best defensive days are past him, and he's just not someone that can guard bigger wings. You have Iguodala, but there's another year of mileage on his body, so um, I don't think I think that loss is very understated. None. This is another individual who is part of their youth movement. Started off the season gangbusters, had a couple of injuries, injury in the bubble. Is not a starter anymore. So what do they have in him? Was that 20-point per game average that he had for a good amount of the season? Was that a mirage, or is that the player that he is with enough opportunities and touches? Um, so as far as their opportunities in the East, I think they're always going to be right there. You have one of the greater coaches, like I said, in the league. Um, you have Jimmy Butler, who proved himself as a legit player that could carry his team in stretches, and then you have Bam, who wants to be great. Bam, who's brought something into his bag every offseason. We'll see what type of player he becomes, but I definitely think they're going to be in the mix one of the top seeds out West East, excuse me, especially because I see the Bucks taking a little bit of step back this year. So yeah, and then also, not to mention this year, COVID restrictions, that applies to other teams. I think that's going to affect teams mentally. You don't have the bubble scenario, but you have a very trying season. You have teams being displaced, uh, such as the Raptors. You have teams with no home fans at all, players trying to limit contact, COVID exposures. I do think the disciplined teams, teams that are strong mentally, uh, have a better advantage. And, like I mentioned, Miami's one of their culture is just to be mentally strong and to soldier through things. Um, One of the more interesting things for them as well was their draft pick of Precious. He's supposed to be a Bam light, so we'll see what happens. There's a lot of times when Bam was out of the game, their team suffered, and I think that's a lot to throw on a rookie to expect him to be the defensive stalwart and be a Bam light player. But we'll see what ends up happening for that. They brought Leonard back at a pretty large number. I don't know if that portends to bringing him back at that number, so he's a trade chip. But for someone who didn't play a lot, I was surprised at the number that they brought him back in the clutch. Um, so that was interesting to me. What Dragic has left in the tank, the Dragon, you know, destroyed the Celtics. Was missing in the Lakers series, and they definitely could have used his scoring. So we'll see. Because he's getting up there in age. He's Dragic, 34 years old. Yeah. So not a spring chicken anymore. So we'll see if he still has the juice this season. Eventually the fall offs come. You don't know if this is this year or years to come down the line. So we'll see. Yeah, the addition of Mo Harkless, I think, is big. Defensively, we talked about Iguodala getting up there in age. Iguodala is 36. Yeah, so to ask him to night in, night out to go the other team's best wing, it's a hard thing to do now. More Harkless can definitely do that, but you just suffer with a 3-point shooting, which is why, once again, going back to what I said earlier about Crowder, why Crowder was such a big player for them, and his loss is so impactful. for them. Just in my personal opinion, I'm interested to see why they didn't sign him. I definitely would have went Crowder over Myers Leonard. You have just a trough to me of solid big man. You can bring in my man, what's his name? That got released from the King, Dwayne Dedman. He's still, hanging out. So that's someone definitely I would have looked at. But you have him in the culture, and he knows the business, and he got a pretty good offer from the Sun. So maybe that makes sense into it. And then Kelly Olynyk, uh, you know, serviceable big, can score every once in a while. He have a game where he looks like second coming of Dirk and Whiskey, but a valuable rotation player. So all in all, with Miami, the most impactful player for them this season. Contact is tripping. The most impactful player for them this season is Hero. Does he have another leap in him? Um, is he what Miami believes he is, a player that could be on Devin Booker's level? This second year is when we really started to see Devin Booker as a scorer. I believe it was his second year that he had that 70-point game in Boston Garden. So we'll see what type of player he becomes. He's still, from what I've seen of him in the preseason, he still seems a bit slight. I don't think he's really gained any weight. I think that Devin Booker is a sturdier guard, especially if you're going to be a smaller guard. I do think you need to be a little bit sturdier to deal with the pounding of being the team's scorer. And surprised me that he didn't, work on his body more this offseason, but we'll see how that happens. What happens with that? Most intriguing player for me, I would say, have to be the Bam Precious combo. Bam, what did you add to your game? Did you add a 3-point shot to your game? I know he wants to continue to grow as a player. He dribble drive, yes. Floaters in the lane because he is a smaller big. What does he add to his game? And Precious, can you be that player that when Bam sits, the teams, the defensive, tenacity that they have doesn't just fall off a cliff? Can he be that player? He's a young player. I don't know how many years he spent in college. Let me see, bring it up. He's 21, so he's not a rookie. He's played a little bit, and he played at Memphis. Um, don't really know their program there, if they're focused on defense or not, but he's a young player, so we'll see. But I do think it's a lot to ask a young player to, step in and, fill the reins defensively when Bam, all, league type performer sits out. As far as their opportunities, I don't think they're a title contender this year. I am interested to see if they revisit the Harden situation. If they do end up making that trade, I think Duncan Robinson's a sticking point. I don't know which way I would go if I was Houston or if I was um, Miami, because Duncan Robinson's a great player. I'm guessing if you're Miami, Houston, you have to act he's in the piece, but he's such a great shooter, man. It's just, those guys, you're not gonna find those guys everywhere, anywhere. They're just not hanging out. So, but then you have cap considerations because you have to pay him, you have to pay Jimmy, you have to pay, so it's just like there are some considerations there. I don't think, once again, that they can win the title, but they're an interesting trade team. I wouldn't be surprised if they end up with the East best seed. I think they match up well with the majority of the teams out east. The season will tell. I'm interested to see how they match up versus versus a team like the Nets. I think that I would love to see how Coach Spo goes about defending them. They do have the horses to do that, though. And then another interesting thing, once again, is the trade. The Giannis thing kind of cleared the deck. They were one of the Giannis rumor teams from the beginning. And now that he's not going to be there, do they focus on a Harden or a Bradley Beal? Um, if depending on the start that Washington comes out to, maybe he might be someone that they might be interested in. How in love they are with heroes. It's easy to say those things now, but we'll see. And just because he had a great, playoff bubble doesn't mean that that's the player that he's going to become. I remember Ike Diagu being a untouchable for the Warriors. Shout out to my Nigel bro, but that didn't really work out well. So you can't really take too much of that scene and say that's the player who he's going to be. His performance in the bubble. So we'll just see. Miami, very very interesting team. So that is 15 teams, 15 minutes on the Miami Heat. Once again, 30 teams, 30 minutes. If you have any comments, I'll respond to them at the bottom. We're going to hit every team every week this year. Give every team some love. So definitely hit subscribe. If you have a friend who has a team in a small market, team that nobody talks about them, me and Obi are going to talk about them. 30 teams, 30 minutes.